Welcome to Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of Web3 security, compliance, and risk. Join Michael Pearl as he interviews executives from across the Web3 industry to uncover the challenges and opportunities of this rapidly evolving space. Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Web3 Watchdogs, the podcast that focuses on everything security, fraud, compliance, scams, risk, and basically anything that has to do with safety and security in the Web3 space. And today we are honored to have Charles Guillemet, Ledger's CTO and former CSO. And the first question for you is, have I butchered your name? How do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, you have to say Charles Guillemet. Yes.
Great. So thank you so much for being here. Very happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
First, maybe you can elaborate a little bit about your background. I know that you've been working for Ledger for 8 years already. Maybe you can tell us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So Charles Guillemet, CTO at Ledger. My background is cryptography and security. And these are topics I'm interested in since I'm 12. So this is a long time ago. When I got a computer, when I was 12, the first thing I did was to try to understand how it works and if it's possible to find vulnerabilities and this kind of thing. So I was a hacker as a hobbyist during my youth, let's say. And after that, I studied computer science, mathematics, and cryptography. And since then, I worked my whole career in cryptography and security, and mostly in the hardware security world. My first working experience was in a small company that was designing secure element, the small chip that you can find in your passport, in your banking card, or even in your ledger today. After that, I joined an ITSEF. ITSEF is a security evaluation lab, and the lab was specialized in security evaluation, mostly hardware-related security evaluation. Most of the market was around identity and banking and this kind of thing. That was not only hardware, but mostly, I would say. And I joined Ledger in 2017. That was not the first time I was hearing about crypto. I think the first time was in 2011. A friend of mine was mining with his own computer, and he was talking about Bitcoin like every day. So I had a look at what Bitcoin was, and what I studied was really like the cryptography and the technology side of things. And I was amazed, but I told my friend, your Bitcoin thing is really interesting from a technology standpoint, but there was absolutely no way that this thing to be adopted by humans and so on. So when I joined Ledger in 2017, he made fun of me, asking if I finally understood. And I think this is when I started to really understand Bitcoin and blockchain technology. And for me, the real value proposition for these objects are like the permissionless aspect. With Bitcoin, with blockchain, you can really own your value, own your data, own your identity, and use it. And this is possible thanks to two different things. And on one side, you have like the decentralized consensus that is brought by the blockchain. So you have the censorship resistance and all of this. And on the other side, you have self-custody. And self-custody is equally important because if you don't really own your crypto, your Bitcoin, why crypto at the end? I think it's really part of the ethos and the essence of blockchain and Bitcoin to do self-custody. With big power comes big responsibility, great power when you self-custody. And then that means also a lot of responsibility, and security is a big one because attackers out there are willing to take over your Bitcoin and your blockchain. And the more there is value, and the more the attackers will spend time and resources trying to access to your Bitcoin. So that's why security was important in 2017, and it's even more important today because the stakes are getting higher.
For sure. And following that, I'm curious, you mentioned you've been a hacker ever since you were a teenager, and obviously much before, Bitcoin and other blockchains emerged. How do you view this right now? I mean, the threshold for becoming a hacker has become much higher, right? It's much more sophisticated, you need more resources, you need more manpower, and so on. How do you view it right now?
No, you are totally right. When I say I was a hacker when I was a teenager, so yeah, that was kind of true. But at the end, at this time, everything was very easy because there was not so much stakes, so there was not so much defense. So everything was easy to hack because no one really cared about security. And then more and more value on the internet, on digital services, and the more the time is going and the more important all this digital stuff are for humans. And now we are putting value on the digital space and on blockchain space especially. So now everything is getting more difficult to hack. And so it's really a cat and mouse game where attackers are getting more sophisticated and then the defense are getting like more enhanced and more difficult. And for me, this is the same two faces of the same coin. Attacks and defense are going together. And if you really want to have like a high level of security, you need to think like a hacker at the end. Like this is really like the adversarial thinking that you need to do to have. And by the way, when I joined Ledger, you mentioned I was a CSO and also a chief security officer. And the first thing I did was to create like an internal security research lab. And this is what we call the dungeon today. And what they do day to day is to try to break our devices, our security solution, everything that we build, that we are maintaining at Ledger. They are evaluating the security and try to find vulnerabilities. And when they do, and they always find something. And when they do, they work with the engineering team trying to raise the bar for security. Because if you think like that you have like designed a very secure product and then it's finished, your job is done, you're completely wrong. Like security is not static; it's a journey. You always have to think of like a new potential attack vectors and all of this because if you don't think about these things before the attackers, they will find the weak links and then they will attack and extract value. So this is really a cat and mouse game, and you always need to be ahead of the attackers.
For sure. And we'll talk about that in a second. And by the way, Dungeon, I often read that you guys have very interesting reports and researches that you publish. So I really, really recommend this. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier, the great power and the great responsibility, right? So for 8 years, you've been leading first the security aspect and then the entire technological and security aspect, I imagine. How does it feel to have this responsibility? Ledger is the most prominent cold wallet right now, and your claim to fame is security and safety. So how does it feel to have this responsibility, and how does your day-to-day look like? How is this, give us the behind the scenes of this cat and mouse game.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned a lot of responsibility, and when you think about it, Ledger is a very important actor in the space. Today, we evaluate that more than 20% of the whole market cap is stored within Ledger technologies. So either on Ledger Enterprise Services side or on the retail side. So yes, this is definitely a big responsibility. If we would do like a big mistakes, that would be like a systemic risk for the whole ecosystem. So I really appreciate this. So this is a lot of responsibility. And then at the end, like security is not, that you won't be able to be perfect. It's always like, it's impossible. But at the end, you must spend enough time, resources, and everything in order to be that attacking your system is as difficult as possible. And then it's also a matter of creating like defense in depth, just in case like one of the layer would be weaker than you thought. Then there is another layer, another safe net. And this is really the way I'm thinking about that. And again, like there is the product security side, then there is also the supply chain side. Like security is not only one aspect. So really what I do day to day. So first of all, now I have a big technology team. We are between 250 and 200 and 300 engineers, and and PhD. So quite a big team working on a different aspect, different projects. So we have Ledger Enterprise Services, we have the hardware devices with the operating system. We have Ledger Live with all the services inside Ledger Live. You can buy, sell, swap, stake, have a banking card. So all the services are provided by a third party, but they are also integrated within Ledger Live. And what we are trying to do is to have like an open platform for a developer to use our big security brick, and so that they can build on top of it. So my day-to-day is really like to support the team, organize the team so that they are efficient and so on. And also I try to spend time like looking at what's going on the ecosystem from a security standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint. I am really interested in what's going on with the new protocol, new blockchain. In terms of technology, I really like cryptography. As I mentioned, this is what I studied a long time ago, and I'm looking at the cryptography advancements that we can see on chain, especially with ZK. ZK technology is really interesting. And I also have a look at what's going on in terms of security and attacks, and all the new methodology that attackers are employing in order to get value. And on one side, this is frightening because they are investing a lot and they are getting more sophisticated and so on. On the other side, this is also passionating because they are attackers are getting smarter and smarter, and there is some beauty in this, if I can say. I'm just passionate about security. All these bad guys should be in jail. I'm not saying something different, but they are getting.
But you have to appreciate the creativity that they're putting into it.
A lot of creativity, and they are really, really good, and that forces us to always improve, always getting ahead. And the different event that we saw in the past proves us right. Unfortunately, we are saying that security is paramount for quite some time. And if you have like a few months without big hacks, everyone is forgetting about that. And then you have Bybit, and then all of a sudden, for everyone, security is a big topic. So for us, it's not a new big topic. It has always been the topic. And this is what I do day to day, obviously managing the teams, building new products, new features, but also looking carefully at what's going on in the ecosystem on the technology standpoint, but also like what are the attackers doing, what are like the other wallets, do they have like interesting ideas in terms of security and so on. All of these are stuff that I really look closely.
Very interesting. And you mentioned the supply chain, right? So at the end of the day, Ledger is only part of the security architecture of your clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious you cannot be responsible for the other side, let's say the safe wallet and so on and so forth, and other custodians that go on top of that. But do you guys actually research that, and do you try to help your, I don't want to say competitors, it's kind of like colleagues, in the ecosystem? Because if you identify vulnerability that can eventually be spotted in one of the other elements of the supply chain, do you guys converse? Do you share information and so on?
Yeah, definitely. We work with the whole ecosystem, and it's not only about Ledger. It's about the trust that is around the ecosystem. Because if you are not like inside the space, you could think that blockchain is just about like big hacks and meme coins, and that's it. And this is not the case. Like, this space is really fascinating. There was a lot of innovation every day, and what we are building is completely transformative for the whole world. And we need to build this trust, because if we are not able to provide the trust to newcomers and to users in general, it will be difficult to change the world. While this technology is potential to change the world, so definitely this is not only about Ledger, it's about the ecosystem as a whole. I was mentioning the dungeon previously. They are doing also like security research in the space. They quite often like find interesting vulnerabilities in the space. So this is something that is part of our day-to-day. Also, we have like a stream that is called ClearSign All the Things at Ledger that we have started a long time ago. So ClearSigning is the idea to provide the users with all the information so that he can take a decision when he will sign the transaction. So at the beginning of Ledger, that was pretty simple because there was only Bitcoin and you were like sending or receiving Bitcoin with your device. And the reason why there was a screen on device is because as a user, you want to clear sign. You want to understand that the transaction you are about to consent will do this or that. So this is not a new thing, but with the new type of attacks that we can see in the space, especially on the Ethereum blockchain, we could see that attackers are getting more sophisticated and they now trying to trick users into signing a malicious transaction because sometimes they are not properly parsed by the device. And the idea, the ClearSign All the Things initiative is the idea to make sure that every single, at least as much as we can, every single smart contract that are on EVM chain are properly parsed by the device. And to do so, what we need to do is to collaborate with the different dApps and wallets, but first of all dApps, so that they provide us like a metadata file that essentially explain the device how to parse the transaction. So you are interacting with Uniswap, for instance, and Uniswap is several different smart contracts. And when you are interacting with a smart contract, what you essentially do is calling a smart contract with different parameters and so on. And the problem is that the device doesn't really understand what he signs because he only has like a raw transaction and maybe only a hash. If you blind sign a hash, maybe you are interacting with Uniswap, but maybe you are signing away your wallet. So this is the reason why we are like collaborating with the different actors in the space so that we create this clear signing experience on device. So we are working with Uniswap and plenty of others so that they provide us there's a metadata file that allows the device to clearly parse the transaction and give the user all the information so that he can decide if he wants to sign this transaction or not.
Beautiful. So let's kind of simplify this, right? So if I'm now signing with my ledger and I'm connecting to Uniswap, what will I see on my screen? More or less, like illustrate this for me, please.
Yeah, definitely. So if you don't clear sign the transaction, what you will see is a hash. And it's impossible for a human to distinguish a good hash from a bad hash. It's just like just a sequence of hexadecimal stuff. So you have no way to understand this hash. And the idea is to replace this hash by something human readable. So whenever you interact with Uniswap, what you will see is I'm about to swap 200 USDT against 0.1 ETH. Do I consent to this transaction? And then you decide to consent or not, and then you will interact with Uniswap protocol or not. So this is really the idea. And at the end, it also improves the user experience, like it improves security and user experience at the same time, which is not always the case. Sometimes security makes the user experience more difficult, but in this case, this is exactly the opposite.
Yeah, so it's both more simple, more understandable, and also safer. But let's complicate this a little bit, okay? So let's say Uniswap is quite simple, right? It's a simple swap. But nowadays we have, multi-layered transactions, atomic transactions, and so on. Let's say you're connecting with a yield protocol that will take you all the way, maybe even bridge this to another blockchain, and then eventually it's supposed to bring, give you back a certain amount in a different currency. What will you see then? Will you see the entire string? How does it work?
So with the clear signing, the idea is really to provide users with the input. The user is about to interact with a smart contract and call a function, like execute a program, let's say, and the user will give some input. So I'm about to swap this against that. These are the input of my call to Uniswap. Then when it comes to Aave, then I deposit here, I borrow that. This is the input. but it doesn't give you any information on what will happen, because if you want to understand this, that means that you need to understand the smart contract itself and what it does and so on. So that's why we are working on clear signing on one end, but also we are doing what we call like something like transaction simulation on device. So the idea is to give the user with a risk assessment on the device for a specific transaction. Because, for instance, if you are aware of there's address poisoning attacks. So the idea is pretty simple. When a user, when an attacker notices that the user is using quite often the same address, the attacker will generate a very close address, a very similar address, and send you fake USDT, for instance. And the attacker hopes that the next time you will interact with this address, you will copy paste this malicious address. So if you clear sign this transaction, everything is normal because you are simply sending Ethereum to this address, which is slightly different from the address you intend to use. Not that different because the attacker generated it on purpose. And here,
but if you missed it, let's say on your MetaMask, you will miss it when you're signing this on Ledger, right? It's the same experience.
Exactly. This is the same experience. You will verify against MetaMask, and unfortunately, this doesn't work. So in this type of example, what we understand is that clear signing is important. Yes, I'm sending to this specific address, but you would like to have like something a bit more enhanced that would tell you that this address looks like a malicious address because it has been generated by the attacker and so on. And you would like to have this on the device. Because if you don't have this on the device, if you have this on your computer, that means that an attacker could compromise your computer and make you think that everything is okay while there was this malicious transaction ongoing. So in order to solve this, what we do is transaction simulation on device, transaction risk, transaction assessment on device. And the way it works is pretty simple because, as you know, the device is not connected to the internet, so it can't really do this transaction simulation. So what we do is the following. Just before signing the transaction, we are crafting the transaction to be signed, and we are sending the transaction to several different partners that are specialized into this capacity, like creating like risk assessment for a transaction, giving you a risk assessment and doing transaction simulation. And at the end, these partners will issue a signed report saying we have analyzed this transaction and we think the risk is low or very high. And this assessment is sent back to the device so that just before signing the transaction, you are prompted, hey, there is a critical threat detected by Cyvers because it is one of the partners with which we are working. And do you still want to sign this transaction? If you really want to lose your money, you still can. It's possible. You can continue. And so that on the device, you have like the two aspects. On one side, you have clear signing. You understand the type of transaction you are doing, the type of smart contract you are calling, and so on. And on the other side, you also have like transaction simulation on device. And these are the two legs that make you like more secure and safe for the future.
Amazing. So kind of if we look at it from a bird's eye view, we went from, kind of post-mortem protection, right, to proactive protection. And now we have preemptive protection. So even before you send the transaction, you can already simulate this, assess it for risk, and then give the bottom line to the client, even a retail client that can essentially see that there's a problem and decline the transaction.
Exactly. You're completely right. And again, as I was saying as an introduction, defense in depth is really important. There is no like one solution that will solve all the problem. It's really like adding safe net layers and layers so that the user is secure. We are using like secure element, like very advanced technology for securing the keys. We are implementing the cryptography inside this secure element. Then you have the screen that allows you like to have clear signing. And then we have like this additional risk assessment that are done by a specialized company and that are given on the device. So we have this secure technology that is the device itself that is very difficult to compromise with a very small attack surface. And then from this, then we are using this technology to put every single layer so that the user can sign with confidence.
Perfect. And does this add more latency to the process? How much time does it take to assess a transaction?
No, it's if you are like a very high frequency trader and so on, it's probably not for you. But we are talking about a couple of seconds, something like this. So in terms of user experience, you won't notice the difference, because at the end you need to verify with your device. So for this type of transaction, it's better to spend the 5 to 10 seconds necessary to be sure that you are signing something legitimate.
Definitely, especially if you are an exchange that is moving $1.5 billion, you should take that extra 4 seconds to check it.
Yeah, that's true. Like this Bybit story is really crazy. So for me, the biggest takeaway is if you are an exchange, if you are like a big organization managing this kind of amount, we are talking about billion. The billion, it's a very huge number when it comes to money. So when you are such an organization, you need to invest in like a enterprise grade security product, and there exists such product. When I joined Ledger in 2017, there was nothing. Like there was no enterprise grade solution. But now in 2025, there are plenty of such offering. And by the way, we have built one at Ledger, which is within Ledger Enterprise Services. This is called the Ledger Vault. And the idea of Ledger Vault is really to use the Ledger secure hardware to build an enterprise-grade security solution. And what we do is leveraging like HSM and personal security device. And if you are a company such as Bybit or whatever, you will define your governance role. So you will define the cold wallet, and this cold wallet can be accessed only by this list of people. They can make transaction only to the hot wallet, for instance. And if they want to move like more than, I don't know, 1 million a day, then they will need to gather 3 approval out of 5, and maybe the CFO or the CEO is mandatory for this type of transaction. And so this is the kind of governance that you can implement. The governance itself is implemented within a secure hardware in HSM, so hardware security module. And then users in the organization will have a personal security device. So we are giving them Ledger stacks with a specific firmware in the stacks, so that they can verify the governance, and they can have a look on the device and agree on doing this transaction or not. So for me, the biggest takeaway is like, if you are a company, if you are managing millions or billions, like you shouldn't use like a free open source, like without any liability, without responsibility, without insurance, without KYC, without compliance. You need like an enterprise grade security product. And again, I really like the project, Safe project. I really love the team. We are in contact with them like very often. It's not a new project. But really, I think if you are an enterprise managing millions or billions, you need to use you need to pay for a solution at the end. Like using like a open source free project is great, but when you are a company, you need more standard, like in terms of security, in terms of compliance, in terms of governance. So I think this is the biggest takeaway. And I agree.
By the way,
yep.
Yeah, sorry. Is this new transaction simulation going to be integrated within the enterprise product as well?
It will be at some point, but for instance, for this kind of transaction, we are not using like enhanced smart contract and so on. So all the governance that I mentioned is implemented within secure hardware. So you don't interact with a complex smart contract for which you might have difficulties to properly parse.
It's only for peer-to-peer transfers, basically.
You can also do a DeFi. We have clear signing, but mostly the Ledger Vault is really to do the custody of a large amount of funds. We also have another product that's called TradeLink, and TradeLink is the idea of offering B2B a way to do like trading off exchange. So the idea is to use a custodian, and then pledge fund so that the hedge fund can do like plenty of trading with the exchange. And at the end of the day, or at the end of a period, then we do like netting a settlement to net to settle the position from the hedge fund and the exchange, and all of this happens off exchange. So this is trading. So what we have is really like a enterprise grade solution. And going back to Bybit, so they were using Safe with Ledger Nano X, if I understand properly. But the thing is, like Nano X devices do not support clear signing on Safe. And the thing is, like every single time you use it, it's written on the device. You are blind signing, you are taking risk. Do you still want to sign this transaction? And frankly, when you are a big corporation securing millions or billions, like relying your security with, again, Safe, which is a free project, and a device that do not support Safe is a little bit dangerous. And this is what we saw with the laser.
Yeah, definitely. And what kind of attack vectors will it protect you from? What kind of risks? So you've mentioned address poisoning. And by the way, I just remembered, fun fact, a year ago, Cyber's caught the biggest address poisoning in history, $68 million. You probably remember that. That was a huge debacle. So we mentioned address poisoning, obviously smart contract vulnerabilities. What else will it cover?
Yeah, you also have drainers. So this is something that we saw quite a lot, like in the past month. Now they have created an infrastructure for draining smart contract or like EOA on chain, and they are getting more and more sophisticated again. Now they really have created an industry, and they are doing like draining as a service. So you have people who built the draining infrastructure and other bad guys who are exploiting the draining infrastructure. And what they do is they do revenue share. Let's say they do a revenue share at the smart contract level. So 30% of the stolen funds go to the drainer as a service, and the 70% to the bad guys who are exploiting these draining services. So just to say that again, like attackers are getting more and more sophisticated, and we need to raise the bar for security. So we will detect drainers. We will detect. So sometimes you have like smart contracts who are pretending doing something. For instance, they offer you to mint this very new shiny NFT. You think you are minting something while you are signing away your wallet. So all these tricks that we see on chain will be detected by this transaction simulation on device, let's say. But at the end, I think you know better the topics than me.
Yeah. And if I may add, just to give you one specific example, in the case of Bybit and in the case of WazirX, what happened is that in WazirX case, it was 8 days before, and in Bybit, it was 2 days before. The hackers created a malicious smart contract that was deployed to basically initiate all this hack. And upon calling the smart contract, this would by itself would already have triggered the simulation to say that this is a malicious transaction and you should not engage with it. So it's a huge array of different aspects, even 0-day attacks that we still haven't thought of that this can cover.
Yeah, and all of these things, they can't be computed on the device. So this is really necessary to use like third party and to use like dedicated tools to do it. Because at the end, on device, what you can do is really static. Even if you add more context with metadata and so on, all of this is very static. If you want to have something more dynamic that takes into account the state of the blockchain and the smart contract that are running on it, you really need to have like such services.
Perfect. So Charles, before we wrap up, to ask you kind of a more philosophical question, right? So you mentioned several times that we're dealing with very, very special and dedicated and well-funded hackers, right? And again, hackers is not even the right word because it's conglomerates. Oftentimes it's nation state backed, like, North Korea backed groups. They have huge amount of funds and they work as a startup essentially. As you said, they do rev share and they get talent from other groups and so on. how can you as a company, even a company that is quite successful as Ledger and so on, how can you counter nation states that are attacking your systems? And what does the future hold? I mean, eventually we see them get more funds, more creativity. They're using AI now, maybe quantum computing in the future. What's your take on that?
So, yeah, I agree with everything you said, and again, I think it's a cat and mouse game. For me, a very important thing is like security starts with education. Like as a user, if you understand how things work, how to properly use a ledger device, that you know that it's dangerous to blind sign a transaction and so on. Definitely, if you are there, you are like in a far better situation. So I think everything starts with education, and this is something that we really saw in the past with 24 Words. Like we saw plenty of phishing attacks where attackers were simply like tricking users into inputting like their 24 words in a website or something. And it worked very well back in the days. Like two years ago, it worked very, very well. Now it works less because like we did a lot of education. Ledger did its part, but not only Ledger. Like everyone in the ecosystem is saying it again and again, and then it's getting better in this area. So that's why like attackers are getting more sophisticated, and also because there is like more stakes and more money. It's always a question of opportunity cost. If I can earn more than 1 billion, I can invest several dozen of millions into these attacks, and it will be incredibly attractive at the end. So
great ROI.
They are thinking in terms of ROI, definitely. So for us, it's really about like doing education, and also, as I said, security is a chain, and it's as strong as its weakest link. So for us, it's a never-ending journey. We need to keep to stay humble and always raise the bar for security when it comes to our process, when it comes to our supply chain, and also when it comes to our product. Because at the end, what we are doing is offering the right tools for users to be completely empowered and to be in security. We don't do the custody of the funds of our users for them. What we are giving them is a good safe. I mean, like it's the most secure tool that we have today, and then it's really a matter of explaining well how to use it properly, how it works, and so on. So I think we won't ever get bored because the stakes are getting higher and the attackers are getting more sophisticated. And also there is something that I repeat quite often for users and especially newcomers. When you see something that is too good to be true, maybe this is the case. Maybe this is too good to be true. If you have even like a very high yield on a protocol, so maybe this is too good to be true. If you can, I remember some scam back in the days. The scammers were saying, send me 1 ETH to this address and I will send you back 2 ETH. And under the post, there was like plenty of bots saying, oh, I did this with 5 ETH, I received 10. And if you think about it, like for 1 second, it's too good to be true, and it's a scam, obviously. And we see more and more of these scams. So definitely, users need to be cautious and aware of this. We lost you in the dark.
Yeah. Sorry,
you're back.
Some technical issue. Probably the hackers are attacking us. Charles, I think that's my cue to go. Charles, thank you so much for this fascinating talk. Really interesting. Very happy to see that, to counter all the bad guys, there are a lot of good guys that are, deploying very sophisticated technology and some creative ideas to protect the ecosystem. Super interesting. Looking forward to seeing your new products. And I'm sure we're going to do a follow-up to talk about this very soon. So again, thank you so much for your time and see you later.
Cool. Thank you, Michael. And definitely, I'm really happy to partner with you to make the ecosystem a safer place.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Web3 Watchdogs is sponsored by Cyvers, your one-stop shop for Web3 security and threat mitigation. Cyvers harnesses the power of AI to eliminate hacks, scams, fraud, and compliance challenges in real time, and even before they happen. For more information, visit cyvers.ai. That's CYVERS.ai.